Actually, the history between Palestine and Israel is very complex, and so it's a complicated issue because—
Shut the hell up, no it isn't. There is nothing complicated about this issue. Pretty much any time you ask someone who is currently living there in that region, not people who have moved from there and have the privilege of being extremists, but people who still live in either Palestine or Israel, the consensus seems to be that nobody wants this. Israeli citizens don't want Palestinian citizens to be attacked, and Palestinian citizens don't want Israeli citizens to be attacked. At least that's what I've heard, and I'm just presenting it so you can draw your own conclusions. Because obviously that is the one and only thing that is actually complex in this issue. You would think if both the populaces wanted peace, then there would be. So when we finally ask ourselves, well, why isn't there peace then? That's when we get to the part that people say is complex, but actually isn't. Hamas is a terrorist group. I have heard several Muslims speaking out saying they don't care about us because they don't care about them. I remember last night I was watching a video of a Muslim man who was living in Israel, and he was pointing to the horizon and saying, look, there goes Hamas's smart bombs. They know which houses are Jews, which houses are Christians, which houses are Muslims. Oh wait, no they don't. Hamas indiscriminately attacks civilians. And here's typically where I imagine most people would argue that Israel does the same to Palestine, which to some extent is a good point. But again, you remember that thing that I prefaced this with? Hopefully you won't forget about it. Hamas is a terrorist group. They have it in their charter to destroy Israel. Seriously, think about that. Imagine that you're in a house, you have a family. Your neighbor has a sign that says, I'm going to come into your house and kill you. He shoots through your windows, killing one of your sons. You grab your gun, you go over to his house, and then he's hiding behind his wife and kids. And again, since you're a nation in this analogy, there is no police. So what do? You just turn around and leave and go, I gotta go, and let him pick off my family one by one? No, you're just delusional. Free Palestine is such a virtue-signaling delusional take. No shit, it should eventually become a sovereign nation. Do you actually think that's what the argument is? Do you think Zionists like me are just like, oh yeah, we love occupying? No, that's just the oppression fantasy of the left, where there always has to be an oppressor. Because a common myth that pops up is that the Palestinians were there first, and that's just not true. Obviously Jewish people were there first, but the misconception is that they left for a time. They didn't. Even before mass immigration to Israel began, there were around 75,000 Jews in Israel. So no, the Jews and the Arabs had proportional rights to the land. And if the Jews had rights to their land, then they could invite more Jews to their land. Granted, yes, if I do remember right, the British did take land from Arabs and gave it to the Jews. But just in terms of discussing do the Jews have a right to be there then and now, the answer is yes. But despite this, Palestinian supporters often point to this as the first aggression of the Jewish people, when in reality this is when both groups should have just sought a proportional split of the land. And that was on the table, before the Arab nations rejected it and unilaterally declared Palestine theirs. And so then that led to a war, after which they were offered another deal. This time the United Nations had offered them more than the British had previously offered them. Why? Well, the Israelis were winning these wars, and so you hippies may not like this, but that's generally how that goes. But can you guess what the trend is here? Yeah, the Palestinians rejected this again. And so Israel went on to essentially conquer them, and that's the occupation that exists today. Because the Israelis will go, hey, you can have your land back, just please stop attacking us. Hey, you can have your land back, please just stop attacking us. They have been in talks like this forever, and it's just the Palestinians constantly saying no. Which, no doubt, me saying this is going to make Palestinian supporters upset. There is a lot of history like how the Arabs felt that they were lied to by the British, and so they felt justified in what they did. And most partition plans clearly favored the Jewish people. But the unfortunate objective truth is that while yes, the Palestinian people were definitely wronged by the British, and arguably wronged by the Jewish people who oftentimes acted as agitators, it was almost always the Palestinians who chose to escalate, who almost always chose to not acknowledge and accept Israel's existence. Because a lot of you have been tricked with this whole Free Palestine thing. I'm going to try to remember to link a video down here, but Free Palestine to a Palestinian nationalist does not mean what you think it does. They actively call for the end of Israel as a nation. I'm not saying that the Israeli government has handled this well, because I'm by no means saying that Palestinian civilians deserve this. We shouldn't group them all together. In fact, I think that's why a lot of people support Palestine's actions. Because you have a lot of Muslims around the world who see this as a matter of Jew versus Muslim. It's not. It isn't a coincidence that the more civilized Islamic nations are advocating for peace in this situation. Because if you say that Islam is a religion of peace, then you should put your money where your mouth is. Because this isn't a complicated situation. Sure, someday the Israeli government may not let bygones be bygones, and they'll block the path to peace. But do you know what stands in the way of peace right now? Palestinian terrorists killing civilians. Nothing's complicated about that.